Welcome, welcome, welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we take your profound curiosity, gather up a stack of fascinating sources, and then, well, we try to cut through the noise to get straight to the most impactful nuggets of knowledge.
It's great to be diving in.
Today, we're embarking on a really expansive journey. It starts with a deeply resonant intuition you've shared with us. You've expressed this powerful feeling that the intricate, sometimes frankly overwhelming, laws created by humans, everything from ancient religious doctrines to the complex world of financial regulations, even our modern healthcare protocols often seem to stand in stark contrast to something more fundamental.
Yeah, something like the universal laws that truly sustain life itself. It's a really profound observation you've made, isn't it?
It really is.
You've highlighted this core tension, the sense that humanity might have, somehow forgotten or maybe just drifted away from these foundational universal laws.
Right. And your questions really get to the heart of it. How did this divergence even happen? Who's responsible, if anyone? What are the consequences of, well, failing to respect and follow these universal truths?
And maybe the most fascinating part is your own experience, why you find yourself instinctively drawn to these universal truths, feeling it's hard to follow those human-made laws, even without, as you said, reading books or talking to anyone about it. This deep dive is absolutely tailor-made to explore exactly that.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack all of this. We're going to try and distinguish between the incredibly elaborate rules societies construct and these maybe timeless, perhaps unseen principles governing existence.
Yeah, looking at the implications of this perceived disconnect, we'll be delving into insights from scientific principles, spiritual wisdom, and some very real, very contemporary experiences.
It's a deep dive into how what we make might be clashing with what just is, and what that means for us and, well, for the world. Okay, so let's start by laying out the first part of this equation, these human-made laws. These are the systems we build, right? To govern belief, behavior, finance, health, pretty much every aspect of our collective lives. And when you look at them together, it's an incredibly elaborate tapestry. Woven with intentions that are often good, sure, but sometimes, as you've clearly sensed, seemingly misaligned with those deeper fundamental truths.
Indeed. Let's maybe start with the religious and spiritual laws. I mean, the sources we looked at reveal just a vast array of traditions, each with its own codified system of rules and guidelines.
It's staggering, really.
It is. We're talking about the Baha'i faith, Buddhism, Christianity with its biblical and Mosaic law, plus the incredibly intricate canon law in the Catholic Church, which then influences the Anglican Communion, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Methodist churches.
That's not all.
Not even close. Then there's Hinduism, Islam with Sharia, Judaism with its 613 mitzvot. And the key thing here is these aren't just static historical artifacts. They are dynamic, evolving systems.
They change over time.
Exactly. They've undergone long, complex historical developments. Take the Catholic Church's canon law, for example. The 1917 code went through this massive, decades-long revision process, finally resulting in the 1983 version after Vatican II.
Wow, decades.
Yeah. And that transformation vividly demonstrates that even within deeply held spiritual traditions, the laws themselves are subject to human interpretation, societal shifts, and deliberate modification. They are, at their core, human constructs. Attempts may be to codify divine or spiritual principles, but human attempts nonetheless.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Especially when we talk about the consequences and that potential for divergence from universal truths, you feel? Because while these laws are certainly intended to guide, to provide structure, the very fact that they're created by humans means they are, well, inherently subject to human interpretation.
And, as our sources starkly point out, sometimes manipulation. The concept of outer authority is highlighted here.
Explain that a bit.
It refers to the kind of authority that often demands submission. Sometimes it's submission to secular laws, sometimes to religious doctrines. But the point is, it demands obedience regardless of whether those laws align with an individual's inner sense of right or, broader universal truth.
It's the external decree overriding your internal conviction, your intuition.
Exactly. And this stands in stark contrast to what some profound spiritual teachings suggest is a fundamental, universal principle, the spiritual law of equality.
Okay.
Our sources present Jesus, for instance, as someone aiming to dismantle precisely those notions of chosen people and specialness. His core teaching, as it's presented here, emphasized that there's no difference between a Jew and a Gentile, between a man and a woman, between a black person and a white person, between a gay person and a straight person.
Everyone's equal.
Essentially, yes, that all are equally deserving of love and acceptance. It implies a universal inherent value for every single soul. This principle of equality is described as an inner authority, a divine truth residing in our hearts.
And here's where the tragic divergence can happen, the thing you're sensing. When human-made religious laws deviate from this universal principle of equality and love,
The consequences can be profound
Yeah.
and devastating, directly contradicting the very purpose of sustaining life harmoniously.
how so?
Well, the sources state directly that teachings which separate one human being or group of human beings from another, give privileges to one and take freedoms away from another,
Yeah.
can actually be used to justify various forms of torture, murder, and genocide.
That's chilling.
It is. It shows how human interpretations, when they get twisted by self-interest or a desire for control or this belief in specialness, can utterly contradict foundational principles of universal love. And that leads to immense societal harms.
It really gets at your intuition, doesn't it? That feeling that this is about conquering free will, often through division.
It seems very relevant. It's the difference between maybe a pure, unifying spiritual message and how it gets filtered through human biases, sometimes for very human, very self-serving purposes.
And the evolution of Catholic canon law you mentioned, that revision.
It's a concrete historical example of this human adaptation. The fact that it was revised in 1983, this massive undertaking from the 1917 version, just shows these aren't immutable, divinely static decrees. They're human constructs, adapted to changing contexts and interpretations.
Right.
The sources also touch on something they call Old Testament consciousness, a mindset may be characterized by blame, judgment, punishment, versus New Testament thinking, where mistakes are viewed more as, well, learning opportunities, paths for growth, not condemnation.
A more forgiving perspective.
Ideally. But the point is, even with evolving spiritual interpretations, humanity can get stuck in these very human-centric cycles of judgment and denial. And that hinders true spiritual growth and alignment with universal principles like compassion and learning. It highlights how even within spirituality, human filters can obscure those deeper unifying truths.
Okay, so that's religion and spirituality. Shifting gears now, let's look at how we try to regulate another massive human construct. Finance, financial laws, regulations.
Oh, yes.
The quest for stability here is incredibly complex. And as we've seen time and again, it seems fraught with peril, often prone to the very instabilities it aims to prevent. It feels like another area where human-made rules can generate consequences that run counter to universal principles of, say, balance and transparency.
That's a great way to put it. Banking regulation, as defined in our sources, is basically the set of rules governing how banks start up and operate, while supervision is putting those rules into practice.
And the stated goals are good, right?
Oh yeah, the goals are noble. Financial system stability, protecting consumers and investors, fostering healthy competition, all good things. However, the 2007-09 global financial crisis really laid bare some major shortcomings in market discipline, regulation, and supervision.
That crisis hit hard.
It did. And that global shock led to a wave of post-crisis reforms. Things like increased capital requirements, you hear about Basel II and Basel III, and new processes for dealing with what are called systemically important financial institutions, or SIFIs.
The too big to fail banks.
Exactly. Banks so large and interconnected that their failure could just cascade through the whole economy.
But even with these really ambitious intentions, these human-made laws face huge challenges. And ironically, sometimes they seem to lead to greater fragility.
That's the paradox. The banking sector is inherently subject to things like negative externalities, costs imposed on others, like taxpayers who weren't part of the deal, and information asymmetries, where one side, usually the bank, knows more than the other, like regulators or investors.
So the playing field isn't level.
Not inherently. And these characteristics make achieving those noble goals incredibly difficult. And here's what's truly fascinating and problematic: how blanket government support, things like expanded deposit insurance or those massive bank bailouts, remember the EU figures, peaked at around 11% of their GDP in 2009.
11%. That's staggering.
And it is, and still over 6% in 2017. This kind of support can unintentionally create what's called moral hazard.
Okay, break down moral hazard for us.
Sure. It's essentially when one party takes on more risk because they know another party, often the government or taxpayers, will bear the cost if things go wrong.
Like having amazing insurance so you drive a bit faster.
That's a decent analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
For banks, knowing they might be deemed too big to fail and get bailed out, well, they might, become less rigorous in their own risk assessment. It reduces the incentive for the private sector, the market itself, to monitor risk and exercise control, because the natural consequences of bad decisions are buffered or removed entirely.
So the safety net actually encourages riskier behavior.
It can, yes. The market, which should ideally be scrutinizing bank behavior, can also become complacent because the government is effectively backstopping the system.
And it's not just the bailouts causing these kinds of perverse incentive.
No, not at all. Our sources highlight how regulators sometimes expand the definition of Tier 1 capital, which is supposed to be the core loss-absorbing cushion a bank holds.
The really solid stuff.
Right. But when they expand that definition to include things like hybrid debt or, say, revaluation gains, it can actually increase the opacity for market monitors. It makes it harder to see the real risk. And it can deteriorate the quality of regulatory capital.
Like building a wall but using weaker bricks inside. Looks okay, but isn't as strong.
Exactly. And the source points out that in developing countries, non-cash assets, including borrowed funds, are increasingly allowed to serve as initial bank capital, probably weakening the loss-absorbing capacity of bank capital. That's a really concrete flaw in regulatory design, where human attempts to create safeguards inadvertently introduce new vulnerabilities and hide the underlying risks.
And the complexity just keeps growing.
It does. Supervisory capacity, the ability of regulators to actually oversee the banks effectively, often fails to keep pace with the sheer complexity of bank regulations. This is particularly true in developing countries where resources might be tighter.
So the rules get more complex, but the oversight doesn't keep up.
Often, yes. And we saw that concept of too big to fail, TBTF, emerge because these sci-fis could cause substantial economic damage if they failed,
Wow.
basically forcing governments to step in.
Which led to new mechanisms.
Right, things like single point of entry resolution processes. These are designed to manage a failing sci-fi without causing wider contagion. But here's the kicker. These processes are still largely untested in a real-world crisis.
Untested. That's comforting.
Isn't it? So you have these elaborate human-made systems designed with good intentions to control complex financial flows, but they paradoxically introduce new fragilities, perverse incentives, and untested solutions that seem anything but aligned with true, transparent, universal stability.
It sounds like a continuous reactive cycle. Problem, solution, new problem.
That really captures it. The average peak liquidity support during banking crises after 2006 hit 15% of deposits, and capital support was 7% of GDP. These are huge numbers underlining the instability generated by these systems.
And the crisis showed that regulators didn't have enough information or monitoring power.
Exactly. And the greater complexity of credit risk measures increased the opacity, making it harder for everyone to see the risks. It directly contradicts any principle of clear, transparent understanding needed for a truly stable system. It seems the more we try to control, the more complex and opaque things become.
Okay, let's turn now to healthcare. This is a sector where the disconnect between human-made laws and maybe universal truths about well-being often feels really visceral, really personal. Your intuition about laws created by humans to conquer free will finds a powerful, maybe unsettling echo here. Our sources offer a pretty sharp critique.
Absolutely. The autobiography provides a really strong critique of human-made healthcare systems and protocols. It shows how bureaucracy and, frankly, profit motives can overshadow patient care and universal well-being.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. It details issues like the difficulty for certain demographics, specifically Brahmins in the example given, to enter medical school due to reservation policies, essentially limiting access for certain groups.
So structural barriers.
Yes. And then there's the General Medical Council, GMC, in the UK, not recognizing Indian medical training, forcing highly qualified doctors to jump through extra hoops, like passing exams like PLAB, which might be redundant. It creates unnecessary barriers, inefficiencies.
Okay, but the critique goes deeper than just access, right?
Much deeper. There's a strong rejection of doctors being forced to follow a misleading and masterminded protocol disguised as proper care. This, the source argues, leads to ill-conceived diagnosis by younger doctors who are essentially trained to pick the paper without fully understanding the patient.
Losing the human element in a checklist.
Precisely. And this directly speaks to your concern about human-made laws being used to conquer free will, both for the patient, obviously, but also, in a sense, for the practitioner who feels constrained.
How so for the practitioner?
The source describes people in power in the NHS in the UK, along with the World Medical Association, Royal Colleges, even the Secretary of State, engaging in harassment, humiliation, and actions that go beyond the ethical ways of doing things.
Against those who question the protocols?
It seems so. The author posits, quite profoundly, that power can be very corrupting, leading authorities to create rules and break them when they go against their selfish interest.
That's a critical insight into the divergence. When human systems prioritize control or profit or just institutional self-preservation over the actual well-being of individuals and the search for truth.
They deviate sharply from universal principles like compassion and genuine care. It becomes about maintaining the system, not necessarily about healing.
And this extends to the pharmaceutical industry too.
Oh, very powerfully. The source accuses it of running dry on new ideas and resources for critical things like antibiotics. This stagnation, combined with the widespread misuse of the antibiotics we do have.
Like giving them for viruses.
Exactly, where they're totally ineffective, but contribute massively to antibiotic resistance spreading through patients' waste. Well, this has tragically led to the rise of new kinds of deadly bacteria infection like the Ebola virus and these highly resistant superbugs like MRSA and KBC.
Liver bugs, yeah.
The system's focus on profit and control, rather than on comprehensive health, can lead to situations where, as the source puts it, doctors, inflicting the fear of hospitalization and death in patients, then you let the trauma get to you, worrying and thinking and popping pills that only brings them profits.
So the system can incentivize fear and pill popping over real healing.
That's the critique, yes. It illustrates how human-made protocols can incentivize practices not necessarily aligned with true healing or long-term health, but perhaps more with financial gain and maintaining a certain power structure.
You can really hear the personal impact in the author's account. Being accused of a racist for not having a specific drug, the harassment from medical bodies for challenging protocols.
Yes, it's painted as almost clownish that doctors are forced into this misleading and masterminded protocol. But the real tragedy is the systemic outcome.
Like the antibiotic resistance.
Exactly. Patients get antibiotics for viruses, which do nothing for the virus but kill beneficial bacteria and breed resistance. Then, through their feces and urine, the infection is disseminated into society, spreading resistance far and wide. That's a direct consequence of a human system failing to align with basic biological and ecological universal principles.
It sounds like a failure of understanding almost.
The source even mentions nurse prescribers potentially having inadequacy in pharmacological knowledge and relying too heavily on limited formularies, suggesting flaws in protocol design itself. It emphasizes how a focus on maybe expediency or profit over deep, comprehensive understanding can have truly dire consequences for public health.
Okay, so we've spent some time looking at this elaborate, sometimes deeply problematic tapestry of human-made laws and systems. Now let's shift our gaze dramatically. Let's look at the other side of the coin, the unyielding power of universal laws.
The fundamental rules.
Right. These aren't concepts we invent or vote on. They're principles we observe, describe, and hopefully align with the basic rules of existence itself. This is where your intuition about the laws of the universe really comes into focus.
Indeed. And let's start with what our sources call the unseen architects, the fundamental physical laws of the universe. This is the bedrock of physics, the very fabric of reality, governing everything from the tiniest subatomic particles to the grandest galaxies.
The absolute basics.
The absolute basics.
Yeah.
Our source highlights the four fundamental forces of nature: strong, weak, electromagnetic, and gravitational forces. They are, in a sense, the unseen hands shaping everything we perceive.
It's truly incredible how these forces dictate so much. Take electromagnetism.
Yeah, it's vastly stronger than gravity at short ranges. It literally binds electrons to atoms. It holds molecules together. It's responsible for almost everything you experience macroscopically: light, magnets, electricity, friction, even the chemistry of life itself.
Maxwell unified electricity and magnetism,
He
right?
did, back in the 19th century, showed they were two aspects of the same force. And his equations are even consistent with special relativity, demonstrating the constant speed of light, that cosmic speed limit.
And then there's gravity.
The dominant force over large astronomical distances. It's what's holding together the large-scale structures in the universe, such as planets, stars, and galaxies. It's the grand architect of cosmic structure, pulling everything together, from an apple falling from a tree to entire galaxies doing their slow, spiraling dance.
In thermodynamics, those laws always sounded important.
They're fundamental. They govern energy and how it transforms. The first law is elegantly simple, but profound. Energy doesn't simply materialize or disappear. Conservation of energy. Any gain by a system is a loss by its surroundings, and vice versa. N equal is Q plus W, a fundamental balance.
Okay. And the second law?
Perhaps even more profound in its implications. For a spontaneous process, the entropy of the universe increases. Entropy is basically a measure of disorder or randomness.
Things fall apart.
In a sense, yes. Things naturally tend towards a greater state of disorganization over time. It's why a dropped glass shatters and never spontaneously reassembles itself. There's this constant underlying universal drive towards, well, chaos, or at least less order.
We also can't forget Newton's laws of motion. Feels like high school physics, but they're fundamental.
Absolutely. His first law, inertia. Every object perseveres in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a right line, unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed thereon. And the key modern understanding, building on Einstein, is no absolute standard of rest. It's all relative motion. But inertia still holds.
And the third law, action-reaction.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, which relates to the even more fundamental principle of conservation of momentum. And the classic example, free fall. All bodies, regardless of mass, accelerate at the same rate, as 9.8 meters forward, near Earth. That comes directly from combining Newton's second law with his law of universal gravitation. Beautifully simple, universally true.
What's really fascinating, though, is that these laws, we didn't create them.
Exactly. We observe them, we describe them, we model them. They have a definite shape because of the way reality is. Their existence raises these huge philosophical questions. Why do the numbers that shape our universe exist at all? Or the idea of fine-tuning. The physics of the universe appeared to be fine-tuned for life.
Meaning if things were slightly different.
Life as we know it might not exist, which hints at maybe an underlying intelligence or design, depending on your perspective. And even when these precise laws lead to apparent chaos and unpredictability in complex systems.
Like the three-body problem, or that double pendulum thing.
Exactly. Predicting the long-term interaction of just three gravitational bodies is incredibly hard. A double pendulum's motion is mesmerizingly chaotic. But even that chaos arises from inherent deterministic principles, not pure randomness. It follows the rules, even if the outcome is unpredictable to us.
So the quest for a theory of everything
Reflects our deep belief in an underlying unity, a single, elegant framework that explains all these universal forces and phenomena.
And just to hammer home that point about electromagnetism, it determines all macroscopic and many atomic level properties of the chemical elements, everything tangible, how matter interacts.
It's all electromagnetism at its core. Why the table feels solid, why light works, why magnets stick, and that chaos example, the double pendulum. You start them almost identically, they diverge wildly. It shows how precise laws plus sensitive dependence on initial conditions create complexity inherent in universal principles. It's humbling, really.
Okay, so those are the physical laws. But the sources also talk about intangible architects, spiritual laws. This feels closer to your intuition.
Yes, exactly. Our sources describe these as inner authority, which is spiritual in nature, divine authority that lives in our hearts. These are principles that resonate deeply, perhaps explaining your own powerful, intuitive connection to them, that feeling you have even without formal study. They're about internal truths, not external commands.
This really does resonate with my experience. The spiritual law of equality feels paramount here.
It seems to be. As we touched on, it dictates that all are equally deserving of love and acceptance, with no hierarchy in the spiritual realm. It's a profound counterpoint to those teachings of specialness that human systems often create, where one group is deemed superior. This law suggests inherent universal value in every single being.
And then free will. That's a big one.
A very big one. The spiritual law of free will states quite directly that we have the freedom to choose between good and evil, or between what helps and what hurts. And crucially, it emphasizes this capacity for choice exists even in seemingly repetitive, unconscious, or addictive behaviors.
Even then.
Yes, because the potential of choice remains. The source offers a powerful distinction. Victims say they have no choice. Creators know they always have a choice. It's not about blame. It's about empowering the individual to reclaim agency, aligning with a fundamental aspect of our existence.
And tied to that is the law of manifestation. Sounds a bit out there.
It doesn't have to be. The source explains it very simply. What we really care about and energize most is what is most likely to come into form. It suggests consciousness is creative, but it's about genuine interest, not faking it. You can't just pretend to want something. It requires authentic engagement, focused energy. It implies our inner world profoundly shapes our outer reality.
Interesting. What about the law of healing? especially relevant given our healthcare discussion.
Very relevant. It states, "You do not heal alone. The healing of one aids and abets the healing of all." It frames a wound as a doorway, a path to transformation and learning, seeing challenges not as punishments, but as growth opportunities.
A different perspective on suffering.
Exactly. And it advocates for refusing artificial guilt, the blame imposed by families or institutions, often used for control, and instead taking radical responsibility for one's own mistakes or sins. It notes that the wheel of karma is just human beings passing their hurts along. It encourages self-compassion, accountability, and recognizes our deep interconnectedness in healing.
And the law of perfection. That sounds intimidating.
It's not about achieving some flawless, static state. It's described as developing your gifts and talents to express the divinity within us, basically fulfilling your potential. Think self-actualization.
Like reaching your full potential.
Yes, it's a continuous process of growth and refinement, not about external recognition. As the source says, masters do not need personal credit, name, and fame. It's an inner journey of becoming, like training for that triathlon, consistent practice, pushing limits, developing abilities, moving beyond competence and proficiency towards mastery, not for the medal, but for the inner satisfaction of actualizing capabilities.
And finally, the law of oneness, or enlightenment.
This is perhaps the most profound. It suggests all beings will eventually return to our source. It teaches that the light is within each one of us, and as more people awaken to the truth within and begin to trust it, the more Earth vibrates in resonance with that truth.
A collective awakening.
That's the idea. The Sabbath, for instance, is presented as an invitation to enter unity consciousness and to commune with God, a time for deep connection. These spiritual laws, taken together, are deeply intuitive, personal. They emphasize inner truth, radical self-responsibility, interconnectedness.
A path of growth and humility.
Yes, where being wrong was not bad. It was just being human. We all make mistakes. It allows for self-acceptance. They challenge the false self, that persona or mask that we wear to gain acceptance and approval, which blocks authentic experience and real love. And critically, as you felt, they argue you can't just rely on the healthcare industry to cater their lives. You have to empower yourself by aligning with these deeper, internal, universal truths.
Okay, so we've laid out these two sides. The elaborate, often flawed human-made laws and the profound, unyielding universal principles. This brings us right back to the core of your intuition, your question. If these universal laws are so fundamental, so inherent to sustaining life, how did humanity lose its way? How did we forget these principles? What was the genesis of this great divergence you feel so strongly?
That really is the crux of it, isn't it? And it's a fascinating, complex question. Let's maybe start by considering the nature of our understanding itself. Even our grasp of the physical laws, as profound and accurate as it is still ultimately a human construct.
How do you mean?
Well, our sources describe the laws of physics as useful distillations, and the creation of human beings designed to accurately describe reality. While their shape is absolutely dictated by reality itself, gravity is a force, energy is conserved. Our descriptions, our models, are always filtered through our current limitations.
Limitations of observation.
Tools.
Both. And maybe limitations of our consciousness. The source asks, are there parts of reality that we haven't been able to observe or measure? Probably both. Definitely that last part, though, yes. This implies even our most fundamental scientific laws are human interpretations, always incomplete, always open to refinement.
Like the incompatibility between quantum mechanics and general relativity. Exactly. Our two most successful theories describing reality are famously incompatible. This strongly suggests there's a deeper law of physics we haven't determined yet, that unified theory everyone's searching for. It reinforces the idea that our current understanding is partial. We might have forgotten, or maybe just haven't yet discovered, certain universal truths.
So the forgetting isn't necessarily deliberate ignorance.
Perhaps not always. It could be a limited perspective, focusing too much on the human description, rather than the underlying reality it tries to capture.
Okay, so if even our understanding of fundamental physical laws is a human construct, mediated by interpretation.
But how much more prone to divergence are the laws we create to govern complex societal interactions? This incomplete understanding, combined with other human tendencies, really sets the stage for the next crucial point: how power and self-interest began to erode this harmony with universal principles.
This feels like it gets right to the heart of your feeling that human laws are designed to conquer free will.
I think it does. The autobiography states it directly. No mincing words. Power can be very corrupting, and this explains why those in authority would do and undo, create rules, and break them when they go against their selfish interest. Wow. And it notes quite soberingly that policymakers are not God. They're human like you and me. Vulnerable and capable of making time-to-time errors, some out of the unconscious. This highlights a fundamental flaw in human-made systems. They're susceptible to very human weaknesses. Ego, greed, the desire for control.
And this is a core reason for the disconnect, the divergence.
It seems undeniable. Human-made laws, religious, financial, medical, get distorted when self-interest and the pursuit of power override universal principles like equality, the common good, respect for natural processes, those teachings of specialness we talked about.
Yeah.
They get weaponized to justify inequality and division, which the spiritual text identifies as the cause of all misunderstanding and hatred on the planet. This mindset creates artificial hierarchies and leads to a refusal to correct our perceptions of inequality, to see everyone as equally deserving as the universal law suggests.
And the impulse you noted to conquer free will
Arises directly from this corrupted power dynamic. Those in authority seek to control others, often for their own benefit, or to maintain the status quo that benefits them.
You can see this so clearly and tragically in the author's personal experience with the healthcare system. The NHS and other bodies actively trying to tame and subdue him.
Simply for daring to challenge established protocols and what he saw as misleading practices. They went to extreme lengths, even forcing his family to move countries for safety.
It's a powerful illustration of how human systems, driven by control, conformity, institutional self-preservation, can prioritize their own rigid structures over truth, ethics, and individual well-being, completely disregarding those universal spiritual laws of equality and free will.
And it's not just healthcare. Think back to banking. The existence of deposit insurance and too-big-to-fail policies, paradoxically, increases incentives for banks to take on more risks in normal times.
Right, the moral hazard again.
Exactly. It shows how human attempts at control and creating safety nets can inadvertently incentivize recklessness, because the universal principle of natural consequences for actions is artificially softened or removed by human-made rules. It's a clear case of misaligned incentives leading to potential widespread harm.
So what are the broader consequences of this disregard, this divergence? We see it in specific sectors, but what's the overall impact?
The consequences are all around us. They manifest as widespread illness, profound financial instability, and this pervasive sense of disconnect that really threatens our collective well-being. In health, for example, the sources point to a critical failure. Pharmaceutical industries have introduced only a couple of antibiotics medicine as their factory run dry on new ideas and resources.
A lack of innovation.
And, combined with the misuse of existing antibiotics, giving them for viruses, spreading resistance through waste, the outcome is dire. The author states, through their feces and urine, the infection is disseminated into society, just spreading resistance everywhere.
Leading to
New kinds of deadly bacteria infection like the Ebola virus. And those highly resistant superbugs like MRSA and KPC spreading from hospitals right out into the community. It's a direct consequence of a human system prioritizing perhaps profit and quick fixes over a deeper understanding of universal biological balances and the long-term ecological impact of our actions.
It's a stark warning, the source mentioning the Spanish flu of 1918.
Yeah, saying, it never disappeared. We thought it did, but it never did. It has been around all along, breeding and mutating. It suggests we haven't truly conquered these microbial challenges. Our human systems have maybe suppressed them, rather than truly understanding and aligning with the underlying universal biological laws of evolution and adaptation.
And the consequence.
The public cannot simply rely on the healthcare industry to cater their lives, especially during pandemics. The system, as it's currently built, isn't robust or aligned enough to handle major biological threats effectively, according to this critique.
And similarly in finance.
Absolutely. The global financial crisis showed that information availability and monitoring efficiency of bank regulators were just insufficient. And the greater complexity of credit risk measures increased the opacity, making it incredibly hard for regulators, even market participants, to see the real risk.
Which goes against any universal principle of transparency.
Completely. The idea that a system should be understandable, its risks discernible. The crisis itself, a direct result of these opaque, flawed human systems, then ushered in a period of intense regulation.
The reactive cycle again.
Exactly. Trying to fix problems created by the initial flawed systems, rather than proactively aligning with deeper principles of balance and consequence. It's like constantly patching a leaky boat instead of building a truly seaworthy one from the start.
So this war of plague and pestilence against humans, as the source puts it, seems like a cycle we're stuck in because we only suppressed and found a way to coexist, rather than truly understanding and aligning.
That seems to be the argument. Think about MRSA spreading from hospitals into the community, affecting athletes because of low hygiene in dressing rooms and the share of equipment. The author states they warned about this exact outcome 30 years ago, but no one listened to me.
That's heartbreaking, a failure to heed warnings aligned with biological reality.
It's presented as a profound testament to what happens when we prioritize human-made protocols, perhaps driven by inertia or self-interest, over fundamental, observable, universal truths. The consequences are devastating and potentially entirely preventable.
Okay, so we've explored this great divergence, this clash between human-made laws and universal principles. It can feel a bit bleak, but what's the path forward? How do we realign? It seems to start quite powerfully with exactly what you've already experienced, trusting that inner intuition.
This is perhaps the most validating point for your own personal journey, and it's a crucial insight for everyone listening. You noted finding it hard to follow the laws created by human, and following the law of the universe, though I have not read any books or spoke to anyone about this.
Yeah, that feeling.
It directly resonates with the spiritual texts in our sources. They define inner authority as the divine authority that lives in our hearts, to which we surrender or submit in order to give birth to our spiritual potential. It's described as an innate compass, guiding us towards universal harmony.
So it directly validates that experience, that knowing something without being taught it externally.
Absolutely. It emphasizes that knowledge of universal laws isn't solely derived from external study, from books or experts. It can absolutely be accessed intuitively, a direct knowing that transcends formal education.
The real challenge, then, is trusting it.
That seems to be it. Trusting this inner knowing, this internal compass, even when it diverges from societal norms, external outer authority, or popular consensus. The goal, as the spiritual texts describe it, is to correct errors in perception about inequality, seeing past those artificial human divisions and allowing the false self.
The mask we wear.
Exactly, that persona for acceptance and approval, allowing that to crack. This enables a spiritual breaking through where the real self comes forward, a self described as playful and can laugh easily at human foibles and the absurdity of life, suggesting a freedom from rigid, human-made structures and a natural alignment with joy and authenticity.
And your personal experience, as detailed in the autobiography.
It really underscores this power of inner alignment. The author describing the struggles that made me into who I am today and mold me to be tough and inculcate that fighting quality. It serves as a powerful testament to the strength found in following that inner path, despite external opposition, despite attempts to conquer your free will. It shows the transformative power of trusting that intuitive pull, even when it means standing against the current.
And this journey isn't just internal. It can manifest in practical ways, real-world applications that act as bridges back to universal harmony. Which brings us to this fascinating example, Dr. Maya GPT.
Yes, this is presented as a direct embodiment of this realignment. Dr. Maya GPT was explicitly created to protect people who will trust my intuition and start following the laws of universe and learn to live in harmony with souls on Earth.
So a direct response to the flawed systems.
Exactly. A response to the shortcomings of human-made healthcare systems. It aims to differentiate common illnesses from critical illnesses, enable isolation of infected individuals safely at home, and crucially, reduce wasteful consultations by empowering patients with accurate, accessible information.
Using technology to empower.
Yes. It connects patients and doctors globally via video calls, shares local health news, all based on the author's 30 years of professionalism and expensive critical care experience, which even led to books on how people can conquer their fear during a pandemic outbreak. It's a technologically advanced tool, but built on deeply intuitive, universal principles of prevention and self-empowerment.
And the author's personal success story informs this, not getting infections for 40 years.
Right. And attributing that success not to vaccination, drugs, multivitamins, and probiotics, but, as they put it, to harnessing the germs within. This isn't framed as a rejection of all modern medicine, but rather an underscoring of reliance on internal, natural resilience and a profound trust in universal biological principles, the body's innate ability to heal and adapt when supported properly.
So Dr. Maya GPT represents aligning human ingenuity AI app development with those universal principles. Prevention, self-care, informed decisions.
Instead of relying solely on those often flawed, sometimes profit-driven human institutions that, as the critique suggests, can actively undermine well-being, it shifts power.
From institutions to the individual.
Precisely. Promoting a healthy lifestyle in society for us to coexist, recognizing that we all have an important role to play in our own health and our collective well-being. It's a move from passive reliance on external authorities to active participation, guided by a deeper understanding of health and interconnectedness.
The app's functions seem to reflect that shift, reducing unnecessary appointments, freeing up resources, giving direct access to advice.
Exactly. Allowing health workers to focus on critical cases, enabling immediate expert advice during pandemics, all while empowering the patient. The slogan says it all. Dr. Maya, protecting you and protecting us. It captures that symbiotic relationship, that collective responsibility that comes from aligning with universal principles.
Which leads us finally to this grand call for collective realignment, moving beyond the division that seems to plague human systems, because the consequences of not doing so
Are profound and potentially existential. The ultimate outcome of failing to respect universal laws, of clinging to flawed human systems, is division, suffering, and threat, as illustrated in healthcare and finance. The author explicitly pleads with policymakers and individuals to shun their pride and ego, religious differences, so that we can join all hands together and prepare to fight the war against harmful germs and stop the elephant in the doctor's room that has brought us to our knees and threatened our very existence.
a powerful call for unity.
It is. And the spiritual texts echo this. The spiritual student is always asking, what is for my highest good and for the highest good of others? Understanding that the healing of one aids, it bets, the healing of all. It's about recognizing our profound, universal interconnectedness.
So the path forward requires a conscious choice. Unity over specialness. Empathy over judgment.
Collective responsibility over individual blame, yes. It means understanding our shared humanity, that human beings have similar needs for food, shelter, safety, and belonging, and a shared fundamental desire to be loved and accepted as we are, regardless of races or religions or values or ideas.
It challenges the whole idea of taking sides.
It does, arguing powerfully that neither side has the whole truth in polarized human disagreements, and the path to peace and harmony lies in respecting the perspectives and the beliefs of the person on the other side. This realignment is described as ongoing work, a continuous process of constantly surrendering a lesser experience for a greater one.
Honoring free will within universal harmony instead of conquering it through divisive human rules.
That seems to be the essence of it.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, here's something to consider, something sparked by your own intuition. If the laws of the universe truly aim to sustain life, manifesting everywhere from subatomic particles to spiritual growth, and if human-made laws, however well-intentioned, are so prone to distortion by power, ego, short-sightedness, then what hidden universal laws might still be waiting for us to discover? Not in a book, not in a conversation like this one, but within ourselves. Laws that could truly revolutionize how we live in harmony with all souls on Earth.